Good all, welcome to today's Risk and Assurance Committee meeting. Great to have you all here. I'd just like to open with a karakia. Tūtaua mai I runga, tūtaua mai I raro, tūtaua mai I waho, tūtaua mai I roto. Kia tau ao te mori tū, te mori o ki te katoa. Pumie, puie, tākie. Apologies, which we do have two. Alistair and Lyndall.
Happy to move.
Thank you. Seconded. Thank you, John. Carry. In favour?
Aye.
Carried. Just to note that we have Morris online with us today. So welcome, Morris. I can see you there. We know your microphone is working, which is great. Declarations of interest. Just to remind everyone, particularly anything before a matter comes up. We've had none received for the meeting. Public forum. We've had no one come forward to speak at today's committee. And confirmation of our last minutes held on the 12th of June. Thank you, Jeremy. Happy to move. Seconded by Phil. In favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. No notifications of extraordinary or urgent business. And questions. We have had one come in from one of our councillors. Morris, thank you for sending that through prior to the committee. I'd like to ask Sam Rossiter.
Should we get Morris to state the question?
I'll state the question first.
Yeah,
all right.
I think that would be helpful.
That would be helpful.
Invite response.
Okay, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yep.
Right, just have to find it so I can read it out. Here we go. Right, so it appears to me that the greatest risk to the council at the moment is bad public relations that is perpetuated by dissatisfied constituents who use mass media to promote their views. This leads to unhappy staff and councillors, leading to insecurity, stress and job uncertainty, and can lead to severe consequences from a political point of view. I would like to ask if there is more we can do in a strategic and proactive rather than reactive way to reduce this risk. I do recognise that there is quite a lot of proactive work done, but it still seems to we still seem to be on the receiving end of a lot of criticism, which is mostly unwarranted, but is bad in the eyes of the public and probably in the eyes of some politicians. So that's my question.
Thank you, Morris. Just invite Sam Rossiter to come forward.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Thank you for your question, Councillor Rodway. For a start, if we cover off the reactive stuff, we do have a plan which everyone's here aware of, which has been circulated, which we're currently putting into practice around countering some of the mis and disinformation that's being circulated by our industry partners. And there is plenty more work to be done in that space. We cannot control the narrative that comes out of organisations like Federated Farmers, but what we can do is continually restate what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. In terms of proactive work, thank you for recognising the amount of positive work we do in that space. And of course, next Friday, we have fantastic celebration of the work that's going on in our community, which will also highlight our role in having good environmental outcomes for our region at our annual community walks. In terms of proactive work, I would just make the point that a huge amount of staff time has been taken up over the last few weeks in terms of trying to make sure that we counter some of the claims that have been made. I think we are getting some success in that area. We will continue to explain what we do and why we do it, and push the real positive side of our work and the reasons why we do that, whether they're statutory reasons or reasons for in terms of promoting good environmental outcomes. Our statutory role is one that doesn't seem to be fully understood by members of our community, either not understood or in some cases, I believe, deliberately misunderstood. Happy to answer any more questions on that or add any further commentary to that.
Councillor Rodway, I'll just get you.
Thank you.
Sam?
Thank you, Sam. Yes, I do know that we are working very hard. I wonder if there's a role for councillors to interact more with some of the people that are making these claims. There's just a relatively small number of them, but they do seem to have a very wide reach. Would that be something that is sensible?
Well, I'm aware that many people around the council table actually do have relationships with people, either professional relationships or personal relationships. And if they are being leveraged in the right way, that's great. I would suggest that we do continually circle back so we have a coordinated approach, so we haven't got people going off in a scattergun fashion. But certainly, yes, you are the advocates for the work that we do. So any role that you can play there is great, but I would just counter that with a little bit of caution and say, let's just make sure that we are coordinated in what we're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think, we're doing a number of things, but, and I've requested a meeting for Rob and I and probably Jeremy to attend the next Federated Farmers Executive, but that's a little way out. I'm intending to actually make an invitation. I think Rob's back in the building on next Thursday for perhaps Federated Farmers and some of their staff to come. We've got nothing to hide. Let's sit down and they may not agree to everything, but every second day having to counteract something is not ideal. I'm aware there's an election campaign going on at the moment, but look, we're always open to discussions with any group, and I'll certainly make that invitation probably today. Actually, I have to find when Rob was back in the building, but anybody. The other thing that's concerning is the suggestion that people who put their hand up and want to see us will be punished. I know there's not one councillor in this building or staff who would tolerate something like that, which is actually quite corrupt. So again, it's misinformation, and we're happy to meet with any group and have an honest conversation. We don't always agree, but there's normally middle ground. You can actually see the facts. You can not normally move on. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Morrison.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I was reflecting on your question, Morris, and I was wondering if it was actually a subset issue of bad PR and more the fact that adversarial advocacy over time doesn't necessarily serve anyone's interest in the region. And perhaps within our engagement with the public, whether it's at meetings with various advocacy organisations, whether we emphasise our preferences for credible, respectful, evidence-based advocacy as opposed to persistent adversarial advocacy relying on inaccuracies or mischaracterisations. Because when that occurs, it seems disrespectful to the organisation, to the industry and to the wider community. And it imposes costs over time on the organisation, on the advocacy organisation or entity that's advocating, because it loses credibility and opportunities for access, and it doesn't serve the interests of our community very well. So acknowledging that advocacy and industry advocacy is really important and an essential counter to local democracy, I think it would be an opportunity to make a pretty bold statement around the preference for credible, respectful, evidence-based accuracy.
Does anyone have any other questions at all for Sam Rossiter? Because we've got Sam here, so questions on the topic. Yes,
I'll answer Morris's question in regards to when he said talking about councillors' involvement. I said I don't underestimate the hours a day that I'm dealing with phone calls, working with parties, visiting farms, trying to understand that, and also looking at it from a governance point of view of how this is all going through. Also and working with staff to get an understanding, because there's two sides, and trying to get a clearer picture so I can, I can get in my head to understand the issues. And there's politics going on, elections going on, and it's quite involved. But the work and the stress, to be honest, on some councillors it's pretty tiring, I'll tell you that. And it's so I'm just saying, don't underestimate what even the some councillors are dealing with this at the moment, because it is affecting everyone in the whole system. Like there's a lot of hours. Probably spent more hours on this than I probably have than anything in the last 5 or 6 weeks in the whole council time I've been here. It's really battering away, and I look, I know where we stand as a ES, but you're dealing with people's lives too, so you just got to be there and listen through it and try and get a clear understanding of what's going on. So just sort of put that. So they're from a council. There are councillors talking with all the groups and everything. So.
Thank you, Councillor Mafau. Thank you, Mr.
Just one
John.
other question, please. Thanks, Chair. Look, we talk about rates, and that always challenged, and it's been pointed out that this does suck resources. I know it's really hard to pull a number, but are you guys able to track and accumulate what trying to correcting this misinformation? What is actually costing us? The fact it's tying up GMs and CEs time, the most expensive people in the building. Is there any way of tracking this, just so we can show that this isn't just a game? It costs the ratepayers.
Yeah, through you, Chair. I'll find the back of an envelope and do a few calculations. But yeah, we've got a pretty good idea of how much time is being taken up and how many different people are involved, because we're talking about people from multiple teams contributing to every public statement that we make. We've got 2 more that are currently, one including a letter and another media statement. And again, so many multiple people coming in and making sure it's accurate. And also, of course, the media are asking a number of different questions of us. We're currently answering questions around our health and safety policy for our compliance officers visiting farms. And that's not we're very clear on what we're doing, but we've got to make sure that we've got every T crossed and every I dotted before we go back and put something in the statement, because we're talking about our legal obligations here. So yes, it's taking a lot of time. I think we're meeting again later on this afternoon, and I'll have a number for you by then.
Thank you, sir.
Great. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Rossestead. Appreciate your time, and thank you, Morris, for asking that question. Right, agenda item number 8, Chairman and Councillors' reports. So just to reflect that this is the last Risk and Assurance Committee for the triennium. So I know later on in our agenda items, we are going to be talking about our terms of reference, I guess our annual activity plan, and just sort of the work that we have done. So just like all to reflect throughout the meeting in terms of what we have in front of us, the papers, the topics, what's in our terms of reference. And then when we come to that item near the end of the day, we can all contribute to say if we are happy with how things have been run, if we think there are sort of improvements in terms of how the committee is run and the topics that we get in front of us. So we can just think through that today. Does anyone else have anything they would like to share? Moving on to our papers, agenda item number 9.1, our operational risk report. Amy.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, I will take the paper as viewed. It's just a brief update of where we're at in our risk management program. We continue to recruit for our risk manager. The first round of recruitment hasn't been successful, so we're just reviewing matters to see how we go back out to market, which means that work has slowed, unfortunately. We have a deep dive coming to the Committee, which is the next item on the agenda, but I will just take the report as read unless there's any questions.
Yes.
Amy, noting that business continuity planning exercise has been deferred,
Yeah.
and noting the tempo of work that emerges into the next training, is it likely that will be rescheduled in the first 6 months of the next?
I would really like to do that. I just need someone to drive that piece of work because there's just no one there to do that right now. I just would like to be really clear though, we do have a business continuity plan. It's just that we haven't had the opportunity to test that this year.
And is that thus dependent on the recruiting effort?
It will be, unless I can free some time up in my own diary or find someone else to support that piece of work for us.
And certainly, when I read this paper, I was wondering, both the risk management program and the business continuity program, previously we've sort of seen a table of actions or a bit of a work plan around it. So even though there might not be any progress, it would be
Sure,
it would be good
keep
to not lose sight of that.
Sure.
Even if
Thank you.
no
Yeah.
work is being progressed.
Yeah, sure.
All right, can I have someone move the paper if there's no more questions? Thank you, John. Seconded by Jeremy. In favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. 9.2. So now we do have one of our deep dives, which we do each committee. I'd like to invite Lucy to the table. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will take the paper as read, Chair, but I just put to a couple of matters. So as mentioned in there that we did an asset management audit late last year, and so the actions that are within the table on your page 15 outlines how the team will be taking forward those recommendations. The other matter that was done at the end of last year was a self-assessment, a maturity assessment that was conducted by ourselves within the ICM group in coordination with the regional sector. So Te Ura Kahika have been working with the river managers SIG, and that assessment was on the basis of the International Infrastructure Management Manual and the ISO that associates with that. And so both of those pieces have been done in the last year, and both of those feed into our improvements across our asset management approaches. I'd also just make note we've got now the uplift in the team for our asset management space. So we've got a new team leader heading up a team there, and one successful recruit who's going to be coming across from an operational division. So he brings with him a huge amount of expertise in this space. And the other final point I'd just make, at the bottom of page 15, we talk about how we undertake our asset management approach, how we do our assessments. So talk about different timings for different kinds of pieces of assets. Some vary from quarterly assessments out to every other year. But the point that I didn't make in my report relates to the bylaw. So we have a bylaw that leads us to do the assessments and then the responses to what we find. So in some cases, our banks and our assets are on other people's lands, and we put the onus upon the landowners to assist with the repairs that we might find. The bylaw is currently being reviewed to take in on board some of these new actions within the audit, but also other sort of contemporary expectations. So the new council will be being asked before the end of the calendar year to take that draft bylaw out to the community for consultation. So that's another really critical part of the piece of asset management improvements over the last year. Happy to answer any questions, Chair.
Start with you, John.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question. You just mentioned we have someone from operations coming across to the asset management. Just back at the LTP, operations team, as far as actually physically there, how's that looking? Because my understanding was we're still reasonably short on there, and I'm just getting a little bit nervous about delivery of the LTP with the stuff.
So we, through you, Chair, we've the person who's moving over, I've already filled his role. So there'll be no light between them in terms of the handover. The person who's coming to take that role is more of a, he's got less experience, but he'll stay and be learning from the really experienced members of the team. We're also going to look at how we've got the work supervisors split across the catchments to make sure that we've got the right expertise in the right places, and that we've got that senior level expertise across our most riskiest areas. We've also got a couple of vacancies we're currently advertising for, both in the design and support space and also in the operational delivery space. So yes, recruiting for many people at the moment, so hopefully we can get them. And in terms of the LTP delivery, that's all forward still as was. The Kānoa work, which I've referenced in here, has sometimes taken us away from some of that planned work, but the work is still progressing.
It's a question for myself. So as I was reading this, I was just trying to understand the way that we manage this as an organisation. So the management of the assets is very significant. You know, we've got the infrastructure strategy, which comes about at the LTP. We've sort of got a team formation in place, a few reports which have come out to highlight areas for improvement, and sort of some policy and some manuals, but just what are those sorts of that overarching piece that the team is using for their direction, sort of both, you know, hopefully not reactive but proactive, and I guess sort of how does it flow from that? Technically, it should be the overarching infrastructure strategy, but then how does it flow down from there, sort of possibly work plans or the likes?
So in terms of the infrastructure strategy from the previous LTP, one of the audit findings sought to the need for an uplift there. We need to make sure that it is up to standard for future infrastructure strategies. So at the moment, we have asset management plans that weren't revised as part of the last LTP, and there are elements of those that are historic in nature that do need changing. So that's on the agenda for the new team to be picking up. There's also going to be obviously the new LTP to come. So the previous LTP set us up. We've got good resources that have been added. Those resources are now turning their minds to how we actually need to change our strategy, and then through the strategy into the plans. Those plans, whilst they do need to be updated, do guide the team. They include all of the kind of work program pieces that they would need. There's a few documents and work programs that sit underneath those strategic intents. So there's the infrastructure strategy in the LTP that gives us big picture. They drop down into catchment level specific work plans. The work supervisors hold both the assessment of the assets themselves and then the program of works to fix what they find while they're doing the assessments. It's not consistent across the team. There's strengths in some areas and some areas for improvement in others, but that was one of the primary reasons why the additional resources was put in place, was to make sure that we're uplifting across the whole and that we've got that consistent approach. I think your question about the where do we seek that direction from? The IIMN, that maturity self-assessment we undertook, and the international standard 55,000 is heralded as the manual which the other members of our cohort across the sector are using. And Stephanie Gray, who's our team leader in this space, she and I were up last week meeting with other river managers talking about exactly this. How do we make sure that we are leaning into Te Ura Kahika's resources and other areas of the country where they've got a bit more bench strength in terms of their asset management expertise. So that process has been happening over the last probably 9 to 12 months since we got the audit reports through. So it's a bit of a multi-headed answer, but there's the strategic as well as the operational delivery.
Phil?
Yeah, thank you. Lucy, I was just noting that the rating for the risk associated with this one is extreme under inherent risk and extreme under residual risk. And I noted the comment that the risks associated with these sorts of assets failing, either through lack of maintenance or an event that exceeds their design level of service provision, are extreme. And I was kind of wondering or curious about that second aspect of it, an event exceeding the design level of service provision, and to what degree that particular risk has influenced our rating. And the reason I say that is perhaps to use another extreme example from finance world. I was told by financial people that their view of risk is kind of different to how perhaps the layman's view of risk is. If you jump out of an airplane without a parachute, they say the risk is very low because the outcome is very predictable. and the risk of getting an outcome that is different from the predicted outcome is very unlikely. You'll go splat. So when we design stop banks or flood banks to, for instance, a level of service provision, I would have thought if they perform to that level, then an outcome that deviates from that predicted level of performance is where the risk lies. So if it's a flood event which exceeds that, that's not really a risk that infrastructure management responds to. That's a different risk, I would have thought. And this might be a bit philosophical, but I'm just wondering if that's shaping our extreme rating for this risk, and if it's putting a burden upon us that maybe is unwanted or unwarranted in this particular asset management space. Any thoughts or comments on that?
Many. I think one of the core pieces for both the LTP and the work that we've been undertaking the last year or so, since I've been in the chair, having good data reduces your risk, right? So that across whether it's financial, operational, or human safety, whatever the risk might be. And we have inconsistent data in terms of the quality and standard of our assets, which was flagged as part of the audit findings, both audit findings. And so the improving of our data and our understanding is critical to reduce our risk exposure. I would also note that with the best will in the world, a lot of our assets are from the 80s and before, and so how they are built and what they are built like and what they'll hold up to compared to what we predict as the level of service or level of protection that they would provide. So there's two parts. And the final bit around I liked your financial analogy. From a litigation risk perspective, if we have said we will build our stop banks are providing, flood banks are providing a 1 in 100 level year protection, and we get a 110 go through, that is all well and good, but actually there's climate change and there's all sorts of other things that contribute to that. And so we really need to take a hard look at how we're defining that level of service, because the litigation risks associated with that are very high. So I'm not comfortable, but the risk is extreme of us not managing our assets appropriately. And the approach that we need to take is a broad and deep one, and it's going to take some time. So yeah, we're on a journey of improving and continually doing so.
Okay. I'll just ask a follow-up to that. So just in terms of that communication with the public around the expectation of a flood bank, how is that done in terms of, because that's where the rubber hits the road, it's more the expectation of certain people know that the bank will perform under a certain way. How widely known is that information?
And so we do it in a number of different ways, and we work obviously in partnership with Emergency Management Southland for a lot of that in terms of, and our TA colleagues. I think again, an area of improvement in terms of as our data improves, when we think about either the quality or the standard of our assets, as well as the information we're building in terms of our flood risks, both of those things need to be communicated very well and clearly, and as we move into doing things differently, which we are, we need to bring the community into those conversations as early as possible, because the solutions won't always look the same as they have done in the past, and what our banks might have stood up to in the past isn't a determinant factor of what they'll stand up to in the future. So there is a need for continual conversation and continual communication, and it has to look and feel different than the way that we've done other communicating about other things. So it's going to take a whole bunch of good thinking and good time. But certainly in the Matoda is where we're likely to be starting some of those conversations very, very soon. And it helps when we get investment to do so. But the LTP has given us a lot of investment to help with these considerations.
Right.
And obviously, sorry, just one final point on the comms. The level of service conversation about where and how we set the level of services will be a core part of the next LTP, given what other regional councils are contending with and have contended with in terms of both liability exposure, but also events that exceed expectation.
All right, thank you very much, Lucy. I think we can certainly see from the discussion and the questions as to how important this area is, and I think it comes up in many different forums as well. So before I close off, I will let Mr. McPhail
So,
ask a
you
question.
hit the nail on the head. It's level of expectations, level of service. Until we actually put the peg in the sand, it's a bit like, okay, talking about Mataura in regards, of course, we can do 2,500 cubics. After that, expect to get wet feet. That's what we've got to be saying. There's a limit. Once we've done that, I'm not saying that is the level of service, but that's what the community needs to know. We get 3,000 cubics coming down, which the 2020 did indicate at one stage. Get out of the way. There's only so much we can hold. And that is, once we set that peg, then we can actually get on with protecting to that level of service.
We had through you, Chair, we had a Emergency Management Southland coordinating group meeting a few weeks back, and we were talking about risk communication, and it's a highly specialised area of communicating, and I think we're going to need some help to do exactly that. Jeremy's just pointed to how we communicate the risks that we know exist in a way that the community knows when they need to move. For one, move whether it's in response or move away from where they are living, or move. All of those conversations will need to be we will need to be well equipped for, and the future council will need to be giving us some really firm direction on where they want us to set that peg, because you can use QMX or you can use 1 in 100, but the conversation needs to swiftly be moving away from stock banks and people building up to the stock banks, assuming they are going to get protected for everything, because that is not always the case, as we've seen other places. And councils are exposed where they have set an expectation in a very black and white way to a thing that doesn't always react the way you imagine it will react, or you model that it will react.
Cool. Thank you, Lucy.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. It's covered a number of the points that have been already covered, but I think some of the important aspects are that the regional sector are working collaboratively together, being able to provide expertise, but also consistency around the countryside. But the conversation going forward for somewhere like the Mataura is that strategically this council will have to look at places where you can spill water, because we know we will get an event that actually will overtop. Most of the time we've done very well. We do have the technology with LiDAR, but also the sort of ground penetrating radar that can actually tell us where defects are. But that's a time-consuming thing to be able to do. But at the end of the day, we need to have timely communication if something goes wrong, that people can be moved, because human life, of course, is at the top of the list. I know we won't say any more because we're only at item earlier in the item, but no, thanks for that report, Lucy. And obviously we're working through some of that stuff. It takes a while to get all the different defects out of the system, but it's that strategic whole of catchment going forward thing that is probably the next on the agenda for the next council.
Thank you, Nicole. So I'll move. Oh,
Can I have one quick question?
one quick question.
Question is,
Last
the
question.
insurance industry, does that tie us to level of service definition using event return frequency, or we have the freedom to go to volume based?
Through you, Chair, no, the insurance industry isn't what's tying our hands for levels of service definitions, and across the MOTU there is different approaches to how they've articulated it. The LGA and the RMA requires us to include, and now the new changes to the Goymer Act, we have to share risks where we know there are risks. How council chooses to define those risks is up to councils to determine, and it needs to be articulated within your LTP and your infrastructure strategies as per the contract with the community about what we expect. To the chairman's point, I think I would just say it's absolutely critical we have a joint approach to communicating these risks and the state of our assets, so that everybody knows when they need to move, and they're doing that on the best information we've got.
Thank you, Jeremy's moving. Phil, second, in favour?
Aye.
Yes. Thank you very much, Lucy. We do appreciate your time. 9.3, internal audit report and update. Amy.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll take the report as read, just for council to note that we have completed our cybersecurity audit, which is the third audit, which is on our audit program of work that will be discussed in public excluded for hoping obvious reasons. And Robin Campbell from Aon, who worked with the IT team to undertake the audit, will be presenting their approach to us, and then just directing the committee to the table on pages 19 and beyond, which just outlines the ongoing progress of work to close out actions from previous audits. Significantly, we've been able to recruit contract management and procurement business partner, so we expect to see the acceleration of the closeout of some of those audit items now that we have someone in place with good level of skills and knowledge, including in the local government sector, to support their work.
Thank you for this update, Amy. Just had a question. Just wanted to check the table in the appendix listing all of the internal audit actions.
Yep.
I just see under the procurement and contract management, the very first one, are the actions listed the outstanding ones? So I can assume that everything else has been closed. So, I think from the report there would have been quite a few sort of actions.
There were, and then through subsequent meetings of this committee, noting that we had the audit last year, we've had a succession or a couple of people sitting in the GM role who've been reviewing the action plan, and that's been revised, but it has come through this committee for noting. So these are the key areas that were highlighted at that last meeting report, or the last time we discussed that, and triaged as being the most important things.
I see.
To
Yeah,
the area of focus.
so that the key actions, the ones
key
of the
actions.
high priority.
Yeah, not
I
all
see.
actions.
Not
but
all
the
actions,
key
key actions.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you. It's good to get the table listing out, just so we can keep an eye on what's
Yes,
still
agreed.
work in progress.
Yep, agreed.
I will move this report. Someone's second. John, thank you. Favour? Yes, carried. Health and safety, 9.4. Oh. Welcome to the table, Paul. Thank you very much for your paper again. Thank you. Would you like to provide a brief overview or brief summary, and then we can ask questions?
So through you, Mr. Chair, just connect the report with read. Couple of things just to highlight. There's just a correction I'd just like to make to the report, is that in my summary and in the operations section of the report, I refer to 2 medical treatments. It's actually meant to read 3 medical treatment cases. So just some highlights. So most certainly from an operations perspective, the team have been working hard on trying to update and get our health and safety manual up to scratch. So that's taken a piece of work to review that, and that manual is now in a better state. Though it's still got quite a few track changes that we're still just clarifying and fixing up. It's pretty much done as we stand now. Just from a notable incident perspective, there's a few that I've reported on, but just like to draw your attention to the significant near miss we had with one of our contractors having a medical event whilst operating and driving a vehicle, and luckily the response from the passenger was quick and swift, and managed to bring that vehicle under control and managed to get to the side of the road and stop it. You have referred earlier about our business continuity plan, and we did have an opportunity to actually get that plan off the shelf and dust it off when we had a 6.7 magnitude earthquake just off Stewart Island. So that most certainly we felt the shake in the building, and our teams responded accordingly and made sure that all of our staff and so on was safe once it had settled down, and we were able to make contact with them It also gave us an opportunity to have a look at our business continuity plan. So subsequently, the business resilience team actually got together and ran over some roles and responsibilities, and have committed to meet on a more frequent basis and look at further training for our business resilience team our business response team to respond to any future business continuity issues that we might have. Just from from our audit and our audit program findings and so on, we do have our work plan that we've pulled together for the year going forward. So that's looking at addressing a lot of those actions in particular. So it's an ongoing piece of work. So that's ongoing. And then in the health and wellbeing space, we had our annual flu vaccination campaign that we ran again. Had a relatively good response to that, and our numbers are sort of kind of tracking at around about 80 people per year that we did cover with the free flu vax, and that's that's not a mandatory thing. People make that choice. That's all my bits. I'm happy to take any questions.
I was going to start. I was just trying to recall, and I just noticed because we are the main health and safety committee, sort of governance committee, the critical risks. Do we normally provide an overview of the critical risks to the committee? I was just wondering if that is that only presented every now and
so
then?
what we've done is we've done all the deep dives for our critical risks.
Right.
So we've run through those deep dives. What we are looking at in the future is actually getting together with the executive and possibly this committee or council itself to have a look at our critical risks and to get our auditor to spend a bit of time just to assess where we're sitting with our critical risk, and then and as part of that sort of campaign or program is to look at new and emerging critical risks that we should be considering, because I feel we've got a suite of critical risks that we're managing at the moment, but we need to extend that because we most certainly there is critical risk out there that we might not have assessed through this committee.
Yep.
Most certainly being assessed and managed within the organisation, but it does need the eyes of this committee on it.
Yeah, great. Just if we could make a note just for future committees, just I know under health and safety obligations, the governance team has to have sight of the critical risks as one of our key obligations. So just if we could make sure it's included in the paper.
And through you, Chair, Paul, I've been scheduling that session with the auditor for March next year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Perhaps just connecting to that, is there an intention to perhaps include a health and safety overview as part of the induction for the new council when they arrive, and perhaps reflect on some of the data from the last two trienniums of what are the patterns that have been emerging?
Absolutely, yes.
Any other questions from the floor?
I'm just looking at the health and wellbeing, and I see the influenza vaccines.
Yeah.
And speaking from experience here, I went down, knocked me for. But it was actually that I don't know whether I picked it up here, but about 2 days before, I talked to a staff member, and they said, I thought they said they were getting over it, but they said they were indicating, I feel like I'm going down with something, and they were still here in the workshop. So I'm just trying to understand, and obviously it did affect the building here. There were a lot of the ones affected south and generally. Just trying to work out that, do we get asked whether we want flu vaccines? I think we have governance. I see the staff, but it would be good to say, hey, if we're here, if we
Absolutely.
come down.
I don't see why not.
No,
I'm not sure whether we actually extended it right out to the councillors. I'm sure we might.
I think we have done it, but I can't remember this year. But after having it, I thought I'll be standing in the queue. Certainly, it's probably age is getting to me. But also, it's just trying to understand the staff, the consequences of actually, especially when it's flu, colds, colds are cold. These flus are certainly knocking people over. And the consequences of someone's in a workshop, we're all here, and then I hear that. In conversation, I'm going, okay, I don't know whether I want to be talking to you at the moment. Then I went downhill 3 days later. It's just
we need to really emphasise, if you are just look after yourself, look after the team, look after everyone by not being here. So you will be doing that, but we just need that reinforced.
Through you, Chair, is that we are regularly reminding our staff to take the opportunity that if they are unwell to either choose to work from home or take the actual time off and recover and recuperate. We run that through our bulletin, we run that through our sort of our own intranet engagement page. So that's where we most certainly are constantly reminding. In fact, over the last I'd say the last 6 weeks in our bulletin, for example, we've been running a reminder not to come to work when ill and things like that. So absolutely, and I think as an organisation, we're very aware of the issue, and most certainly support people, particularly if they are able to work from home, absolutely. But if they do need to recover and get better, absolutely.
Yeah, through you, just to add to what Paul said, we were quite impacted this year. There was COVID and influenza A and influenza B. So vaccine doesn't catch all of them. It just supports some of it, and it has made people quite unwell. But we do have extra leave provisions for people that support them to go and take the time that they need to recover, and we strongly encourage that. We talk about it as an executive, and we also run that narrative in addition to what Paul said through the leadership meetings that we have. And since COVID, everybody has had the opportunity, or nearly all staff have had the opportunity, and they've got the tools to be able to work from home if they need to. So all the support is there to try and keep people out of the building. I think it's been 5 years since COVID hit, and it's easy to slip back into the old ways, and just reflecting the dedication of the staff. But there's a broader picture here, so we make sure that we keep their comms up, but make sure people are supported to do the right thing.
Thank you, Amy. And Nicole?
Yeah, just on that, and I guess Amy's answered it pretty well. It is a risk to our workload, but it's not just us. Kids have been sent home from school. It seems to be particularly severe, and I'm assuming that the annual flu jab would have influenza A and B as part of the mix. But it's a good question, but it actually and the reoccurring nature of it. We've had people that they go down again, a month later, sort of thing. I don't know if there's much we can do about it, but from not only health and safety, but actually for being able to get through our workload, it seems to be a problem that's much worse than it was now. And it seems to be that people are getting sicker from not the COVID things, but it's actually these other influenzas.
Absolutely. Thank you. And that's the end of the questions.
Happy to move the item.
And before we do, I just would like to, I believe, Paul, that it is your last meeting with us.
Yes.
So I'd just like to very much thank you for all the work you have done. I certainly noticed your dedication to the cause in terms of health and safety, but then importantly just the progress that you've made in this area in this organisation. So it's been very apparent every time you come to the table, and all the actions that you get done every quarter. So a big thank you from me and everyone around the table for your work.
Thank you very much. And through you, Chair, I'd like to just thank this committee for supporting me and obviously supporting this organisation. Your leadership and governance in this space is critical, and I think we've really made great progress in making sure that we are keeping our staff safe and so on. So your leadership and your concern and interest in this space is obviously important to us, and obviously important to the next person who's going to step into my role. And I really encourage you to support the next person who steps in, and hopefully they give you the same level of service that I've tried to give you. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul. Yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul.
Moved by Nicole, seconded by John. In favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Paul. 9.5, insurance from a flood resilient asset infrastructure point of view. So this is an update on papers that we had in the past on this topic. So, welcome, Tracy. Thank you very much. you'd like to provide a summary and then we can ask questions.
Yes, thank you. And Patrick's going to be talking to it. He's on live. So I have a question.
Thank you, Tracy. Look, just a couple of quick comments to support the paper. At the last Audit and Risk Committee, we highlighted an historic risk whereby our flood resilient assets have been insured at book value, but that reflects about a quarter of true replacement value. So we outlined an approach whereby we would insure our most critical assets at replacement value whilst continuing to insure the remainder of our assets at book value whilst we worked out a longer term approach, seeking to optimise balancing premium cost, risk cover, probability of partial and or total loss. So just a quick update. We worked with the catchment team. We looked at the highest priority assets in priority order, and we established a list of assets that we've insured at full replacement value, whilst continuing for the time being to insure the remainder of our assets at book value. The impact of this has been to double the insurance premium compared to last year to provide that improved level of coverage. We're funding that from a portion of our unspent funds surplus from last year that we have been able to carry forward and apply for this purpose. Also worth noting, we've raised flood resilient asset insurance with the Corporate Services Special Interest Group nationally. And we as a SIG group have elected to form a cross SIG group with the River SIG group and others to work on this issue to co-design a more optimal way of ensuring these types of assets. We will be involved in playing a part in that cross-working group so that we can get the thinking from the sector incorporated into our own thinking about how we address this issue going forward. So just a few comments, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Patrick. Questions from the floor? Michael?
Yes, I think it's probably in the next term this council probably needs to look at this whole policy. I think there's probably the ability to do with more self-insurance. In the time I've been in this building, all the catchments have been building up a disaster reserve. We have never actually called on them. Normally they go to current account first. So I think it can't be made right now, but I think there needs to be a report coming back to actually see whether we could reduce that insurance premium by doing a bit more self-insurance, carrying some of the risk ourselves. Obviously, major disaster, the government comes to the party with about 60%, you have to pick up 40%. But I think we're almost double, we're actually building up reserves, which we aren't actually using, but we're paying the insurance, which is doubled. So it's probably something for Patrick to look at in the next term and bring something back.
Thank you. Yeah, Patrick, if you'd like to.
Yes, I'll comment on that briefly. Thank you. Yes, that's exactly one of the tactics that we need to investigate, and some other councils do use, which is for the more manageable risks to build up reserves, sometimes through debt funding, and to have reserves on hand and self-insure at a particular level those assets so that they can reduce their premiums. So we most definitely need to bring that thinking into the mix in terms of landing on an optimal approach. In terms of the action about bringing something back next year, very happy to do that. I'm hoping that cross-SIG group will get together in the next couple of weeks, and that there'll be some progress there which we can incorporate into a report early next year. But very happy to take that action and bring back our thinking as at early next year. I think this will be an ongoing piece of work for a number of months, but happy to report back on progress as we make it.
Thank you. And John.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, question, I guess, around the replacement policy. There's, I guess, there's just more interest in the process of how to get there to make sure that there is a clear understanding with the insurance policy, the insurer and ourselves as to which ones are ticked off as replacement, being that we have such a varied standard of assets that we are trying to bring up to a level of service. So has that been absolutely clarified exactly what is? Just we all know with insurance, there's a grey area at times, and I just want to make sure that the cost of that premium is 100% delivering what we are expecting versus what the insurance company is expecting.
Brief comment, if I may, or response. There is more work to do there. The replacement value currently is estimated on unit rates for replacing stock banks and that sort of thing. So it's approximate and reasonably accurate is probably the status of it. But we do need more precision in understanding what true replacement value looks like. So that's all part of the exercise as well. So that would be, I think, an honest appraisal of what replacement value looks like currently. And there is definitely enhanced information we need to capture and understand to get more accuracy.
So that, well, so that piece is more around, would I be right in understanding that so certain parts of those flood banks have been sort of deemed critical, and those are the bits that have gone at replacement value? Is that's right? But then you're just saying in terms of determining what that replacement value is, it's just that's where the grey is?
Yes, so the replacement value currently is assessed based on I forget the units that we use, but per metre of stock bank, there's a standard rate that we use, etc. So it's based on a series of standardised rates. It's not necessarily specific to the individual flood bank. So there is more information we need to capture and more precision we need to get a more precise replacement value by asset, if that makes sense, because there's a degree of averaging currently involved in the exercise.
Okay, thank you. And Jeremy?
I think, and just to answer John, the 2020 floods, there was a lot of discussion about what it was. And I think someone, I don't know, looking at not older heads, people who've been here for long, there was, I think there's a lot more clarity about what insurance covers and things like that. But it'll be changing all the time. But definitely, we need to keep it in-house, because at this stage, I know going through after the 2020 flood, seeing what it actually cost, probably wasn't as scary as from what I remember. But then we have local government funding that we can get funds fairly quickly to fix these problems instead of working through insurance companies, as long as you're funding it at some stage. We're putting the money away to pay for that too. But but that's something the council will have to, you can certainly tease out in the future. It's not going to get any cheaper with insurance companies and more complicated too. So maybe easier, simpler to be and look after ourselves a fair bit.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Certainly a important area dovetailed into our deep dive earlier, and we've got a presentation from our insurers up next as well. And certainly a conversation that's not going to go away. So thank you for your work on it.
Thank you.
Right, I will move. Jeremy will move, and Phil will second. In favour?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. We now have agenda item 9.6, which is a presentation from our insurance providers, Aon, which is fantastic. Welcome to the table. Great to have you here. We've got Patrick online still, so I think, Patrick, if you would just like to give the brief introduction, and then we'll be able to pass over. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Pleased to welcome Sally and is it Sam to talk about insurance matters generally, and there's a presentation to work through. So thank you.
Fantastic. Welcome. Thank you very much. I'll pass it over to you. We've got your, I believe your presentation slides in our pack in
Yes.
front of us, so you can sort of tell us what page number or the likes, and we can
Yep,
step through it, or
Sure.
however you like.
Thank you and good morning. Just to confirm, so we're the insurance broker. So we're not the insurance company as such, but we go to all the markets and get you the best deal from the markets. There is a lot in that presentation pack. I'm going to focus on two areas as per what I've been asked to do, but there's a lot there. If there's anything else that you want to cover off, we're available now for discussion. So if you look at the agenda and the presentation, we're going to look at number 2, which is the infrastructure insurance renewal update, and we'll look at number 6, which is the loss modelling. But I'm happy to cover any other topic as well. So if we go to page 50, which is the start of the infrastructure insurance renewal update. So just for context, I've just returned from London and Singapore with the council representatives. So literally everything I'll talk about with the market update is literally up to date. We had conversations with the markets 2 weeks ago. And I will highlight there was a specific conversation about regional councils and unitaries with regards to the local water reform and how that's going to impact regional councils specifically, because current placements which are done collectively, so the TAs with the regionals, there is potential for that to sort of break apart with the reform. So that was a separate conversation that was had with underwriters about what would that mean, and we'll provide an update. And there was a meeting last week in Auckland with the River Management Special Interest Group to talk about the implications of that as well. So just flagging it. Okay, so for the placement we're talking about last week, the page 51, we actually have, so far I've done 21 presentations to markets with council representatives. We've got more next week with local insurance markets here and in Australia. Well, all up, there'll probably be 60 markets that we will have talked to. So it's been a big exercise. To put it in context, we have 58 councils that renew as of 1 November. Of course, you're one of those, and that's 6 groups, and Environmental Southland is part of the South Island Council Collective. The market feedback has been very positive, despite losses and claims that have happened. Basically, we've had a long-term relationship with the markets. They like what we present and how we present it. So that engagement has been very positive over the years. The opportunity though is the markets, what we now call a soft market cycle.
Now, can I just clarify, the markets being the reinsurers?
Okay, so reinsurers were insurers of insurers.
Yes.
So this is insurance markets. So
the insurance market. Okay, good. Just want to make sure that
direct insurance markets.
Yep.
So Lloyd's syndicates.
Yep.
And also what we call company markets, which is your big insurers like AIG, Chubb, QBE, that type of. But we see everyone like that, and we get the terms from all of them and then filter it through and give you the best terms available for 40% placement. So for the South Island Collective, the only issue for yourselves is the Tasman claim that's happened just recently. It's quite significant. So that might impact the renewal for the group. Obviously, the premium implications will fall onto Tasman as they've suffered the loss, but we will see what will happen in that space. But the market sentiment generally is what we call a soft market, which basically means premium rates are going down significantly, so double-digit reductions, which is great. And it also means we can be a little bit more aggressive on terms and conditions and asking for things that we may not be able to get in a hard market when the rates are going up. So overall, market engagement was very positive. We're expecting good outcomes across the board, with the caveat of claim for Tasman is quite significant. We'll see what impact that has for you as a group. For page 52, the current programme limit's 500 million. That's a shared limit for the members. One of the big changes this year that's going to occur is for the London markets in particular, that policy is now going to become what we call an each and every policy. There's no aggregate. So you can have as many claims in that policy period. It doesn't matter if somebody's affected and somebody else isn't. Whoever's not affected, the cover continues. So in theory, it's unlimited. which is a real positive. That's one of the changes we've obtained this year because of where the market is. We've increased the indemnity period from 24 to 36 months. That's based on claims experience where it's taking more than 2 years to reinstate assets. So that lengthens the availability of the coverage for 36 months. And also there's a clause called extra expense. We've broadened that definition so you've got more coverage. Just talked about valuations. If your values are slightly out, that extra expense clause can be used to sort of cover a shortfall. It's not exhaustive, it's not a huge limit, but it does gives you a little bit more coverage in events of a loss to claim above and beyond what values have been declared. Things like site establishment costs that may not be known about beforehand, it's available if there's a claim. We asked for the option to remove council sublimits. There may be a cost implication of that, so we'll come back to the council and say, do you want to take the cost or keep the limit? Probably suggest you take the premium reduction and keep the limit, but that's over to you guys. And otherwise, no other changes. The only other comment I would say is, because we talked about replacement values, the valuations within these policies are really important. What I mean by that is the value that is declared on the schedule is the amount that you get in a loss. There's a little bit of wriggle room, like I've mentioned, with some of these additional limits. But if your your values are fundamentally wrong for whatever reason, that can be an issue. So we always recommend spending significant time on the valuation piece. And we are having a workshop this afternoon to go through that in detail with council staff to, confidence that we need. The claims information is provided on page 53. You can see the significant loss that's been declared by Tasmania. 2 separate events, huge weather bomb. I mean, that's the biggest storm event since 1877 before Tasman. So puts it into perspective. Unfortunately, with what happened in the Hawke's Bay, Gisborne in 23, and historical floods elsewhere, there is a trend generally for flood events on this program, which is causing issues or will cause issues in the future. So I think somebody mentioned about higher retentions. Yes, recommend it. If you don't choose it, the insurers may dictate it, just flagging it. So that's something to be aware of.
So we've touched so higher retentions as in when Nicole was referring to the reserves kept by the catchments, is that what we're referring to?
I guess so, and it's probably the whole gambit of the level of individual, like a domestic policy might be $1,000 before you do something, so it lowers things a wee bit, so there may be a conversation there. If it's under 100,000, we're doing it ourselves, so all those things I think can be worked through with we need the coverage we need for a major event, and that conversation should be for those minor ones should be self-insured.
Exactly. Yeah, spot on. So the conversation we're having with the National River SIG Special Interest Group is talking about what will be required and then what are the options available for either individual councils to make or collectively if there are opportunities to do something collectively. So all of that will be considered because the local water done well reform is happening. So there needs to be a real work stream around what is the response from the regional unitary council and unitary councils around that to make sure that you maintain your insurance cover as you need, and you've got a decision to be. You can make decisions around what retention levels without having a dictation from the insurance markets. But yeah, the feedback from the insurance markets was a significant increase in deductibles is likely going forwards. So just a heads up on that.
Just a question on the water done well, whereas okay, we're in the regulatory space, but I'm just wondering what our insurance risk there is. So I thought it would be more CCOs or the owners of the assets that have a time frame to actually set things up to scratch.
Yes, so we're obviously working with all the councils and looking to work with all the CCOs as they're established. And there will be a process to make sure the assets are, whether they're transferred, that the insurance continues, there's no gaps. we'll also be working with the CCOs to make sure that their understanding of the valuation, policy response, etc., to make sure that they're understanding, making sure that they're comfortable with what's been bought and why. With regards to the assets which are not going to the CCO. So the way the programs are insured at the moment, and for the South Island collective, there is a potential that you could all continue as a group together. But there are other instances elsewhere in New Zealand where the break between the territorial authorities are going into a CCO and will leave the regional council on its own. And that's a problem for the regional council, because at the moment insurance works through mutualising risk. If you stand alone a regional council where the predominant risk is flood, and they've got a loss history where they've had claims, they become quite a difficult risk on their own to place. So this is a reason.
And that's just for those unitaries that are going to have, yeah, okay.
Yes.
As opposed to our situation, which I think was your question, to trying to see.
So what you're saying that it could affect our flood risk because we're not combined with
correct
perhaps perceived lower risk. So I haven't actually picked up on that.
I see.
Yeah, so this is what we're flagging to the regionals and unitaries, that ideally, if you can maintain the collective nature of purchasing risk as local government, which is what the current arrangement is, great. But there is a risk that, and if you take it from a CCO's point of view, if they're running it as a business and they determine that it's not in their interest, they want to be just themselves, which is their right, they could turn around and go, no, we're going to go and buy an insurance policy for our assets, which will leave everyone else to do their own thing. And our concern is that will leave, it's not helpful. And so we need to look at options, and that's what we're working through with the river management, special interest group on a national basis at the moment.
Yeah, Jeremy?
Just to clarify on that table, the 1.83 million, the gross loss on air, is that the total cost or is that their share?
That's what I've got recorded as the total claim amount.
Yeah.
Not the total loss.
No.
So that's the insured. That was what the insurers paid out. You got, I believe, less than deductible than 40% of that amount. Okay. Any other questions? No. The next section is loss modelling. I will try and make this as painless as possible. Okay, so loss modelling is around how do we determine risk from the data available. What I wanted to highlight is there are various methods that you can do this by. New Zealand is in a unique position that we have the latest standard, most up-to-date standard globally for the National Seismic Hazard Model. So the science in that model is the peer review scientists were all from the US. They've reviewed what we've done in New Zealand, updated in New Zealand. Now everything that we've done in New Zealand, they're incorporating into the US, which highlights how up to date we are. RiskScape is owned by GNS. It is the only modelling platform that incorporates all of that update. And I won't go into the science because I glaze over when the boffins talk about it. It's an incredibly complex model, the most complex model in the world. And to incorporate all of it takes, only RiskScape can take it. And so what that means is that it's the most conservative approach to modelling risk available. And we've partnered with GNS to use RiskScape to be able to provide that to our clients because we want to give you the best available information. So the approach is simple. We look at the information you provide, so the valuation, the asset data, understand where it is geospatially. Then you overlay that into the model itself with the National Seismic Hazard Model, and then you run iterations, 100,000 iterations, say, to determine the spread of risk. And so you can look at a good day to a bad day and everything in between. And the idea is that when you look at this, if you go through, there's detail on RiskScape that I won't jump into, but if you look at slide, it can be 69 or 70. Look at 69. This is just a generic curve. This is not specific for you. The work for you at the moment is underway. But basically, you've got the mean and aggregate exceedance probability for a group there. The key thing though is that the line above it, the dotted line, which is called the tail value at risk. So what that means is that the mean is the probability of this loss or greater. Okay, that's the aggregate exceedance probability. However, there is within that 50% above that can happen, there are really bad days. So when you're looking at determining what your loss limit is for an insurance program, you want to look at the bad days because you don't want to be underinsured. So the tail value at risk looks at all of those losses in that extreme end, and that TVAR is basically the average of those bad days. So we generally would recommend when you're looking to set limits for a group and on an individual basis, you're looking at the TVAR as your loss, as you're sort of determining your loss limit. And then there's nuances that we would have as a conversation with the council around specifics. If there are assets which are high value that are, if they get damaged and destroyed, does it affect the overall? So there's a nuanced conversation. This helps inform. It doesn't form the basis of the decision. It does, but you have to still have to think about it. So when we're looking at modelling for yourselves at the moment, we're looking at the group, and then we're looking at you individually. We will report back on those numbers. What I would say is that this is where your values and asset information is essential. Modelling is like any statistical process. If the information going in isn't great, the outputs coming out may not be great either. So that's why we spend a lot of time explaining what we need, getting the best information available, and then doing the modelling. The good news is the work that's being done by the New Zealand councils on this basis is regarded extremely well within London. And the feedback from the markets is every year we go in and impress them with what we do, and the same feedback was this year. So they're very happy. So we're differentiating New Zealand risk within the global marketplace, and that's why we have very good market response and engagement, and you'll hopefully see that in the renewal outcomes this year. Is that it? Any other questions?
You go first, Jeremy? I'm sure there will be.
I'm a risk taker, so just when you say, oh, you don't want to be underinsured, that's only where we want to be on a risk based on element of how much risk we want to take. And if we're looking at saying, oh, well, maybe we can fund some of this ourselves, what do we actually want to insure? So I know you're selling insurance,
sure,
but there is a point of saying we've got to determine what's the risk that we're willing to take.
Definitely.
And maybe the community will say, don't take any, just load it up. But then they're saying, but it's going to cost you. What is the, with the data, the right data, right understanding, that's where we can make that calculated, more accurate risk of what it may cost. And obviously we've had floods and things, and building that up understanding. 2020 was a good one to show that there were a few holes in the system.
Yep.
But ultimately, it's, sometimes it's not. We don't lose all the floods. Correct. They break. There's a section. It's got to be repaired. So it's complicated, very complicated. There's a lot of dynamics to the insurance, but you're helping. Everybody's helping. So it's to actually understand the best outcome for the community.
And so my question is, so how do we work with you to get the best outcome for the council? And this is probably, it's a conversation that's never going to go away. And you know the market really well, and what the insurance, what the market, the insurance companies want, and we know our own data and our own assets, and we know what we've got to improve. So and this is actually probably a question for Patrick more, in terms of, I'm just interested. We've been receiving some papers on insurance for a little while now, so I'm just sort of taking a step back around our strategy with insurance, which we sort of talk about at various committees and various meetings. I'm just wondering how we track that as a governance team, and what that could look like, because we can have a great conversation today, and we can say some great words, but then in a quarter's time, in 6 months, and 12 months' time, are we actually heading in the right direction? So I'm just wondering, Patrick, how we capture where we're at. You've got some good thoughts on process. Sally and Sam will have some good thoughts on process, so just how we capture that to make sure we are working towards something.
So just in brief response, we do work and will continue to work quite closely with Aon. I think the answer to your question, Andrew, ties back to the comments Nicole made earlier, which is there is work to do here. We do need to improve how we insure our assets. Historically, we've insured them at book value. That doesn't reflect the loss to us if we were to lose our assets. So we have to get our insurance right in terms of balancing the increasing cost of premiums for insuring at full replacement with what risk we can carry internally. We have to work out whether we should be carrying reserves, extending on those reserves, and potentially debt funding those reserves so that we can self-insure. And there's a program of work tied in with all of those actions. And we need to keep ourselves informed in terms of the direction taken with the sector interest groups and be a key member of those sector interest groups. So I think in totality, that means we should report back on a quarterly basis about what our program looks like, the progress we're making, and the key milestones really are the annual insurance renewal. So we need to be able to demonstrate we've made the right progress ahead of the renewal next year. So to sum that up, program of work, quarterly reporting, and working towards key deadlines, the main one of which is the annual insurance premium renewal next year.
No, I do like the sound of that, Patrick. This committee is where insurance sits, and so just a standing item paper really on insurance, even if it's just here is the one-page plan and our progress to date, and just so that no one loses sight of it and the direction and the momentum. Thank you, Patrick. Any other questions while we've got our insurance brokers here? So there was certainly some great takeaways in terms of, so I'm pleased to hear you're having some discussions after this, so you're here with the team, so not just for us, but to sit with the staff. The actual value on the schedule, which John mentioned earlier as well. The importance of staying combined as a collective, and rubbish in, rubbish out. Into that loss modelling tool. It would be an amazing tool, and certainly I think one that will use it for insurance purposes, but I'm sure that people are interested in it from other areas as well. Bill, before we...
One question we've been signalled from central government that regional spatial planning is an emerging thing, and that we will be likely to embrace that. I would expect that will offer opportunities to look at risk in a more integrated perspective from a regional point of view. We're already collaborating on climate change within the region, and I imagine that, for instance, the seismic risk is kind of more constant, whereas in relative to climate change or climate-driven risk, that might be more dynamic and changing over time. I would imagine if we do move to a regional spatial planning opportunity, that there would be great opportunity for input from the insurance sector to shine a bit of a light on how regional spatial planning decisions might be influenced by insurance considerations. Any comments or thoughts on that opportunity?
Yes. So it's a great statement, and to touch on something. So it was interesting when we were talking to the underwriters to explain that the regional councils look after several unitaries, and its river is from the mountains to the sea and all that, and there isn't different standards for each TA. So it was very good to ensure the underwriters understood how you work together, and it was a good piece of work for one of the regional council reps who explained the work that you were doing on a regional basis and how that's standardised across New Zealand. With regards to risk at a regional level, My title is actually Head of Innovation, and I'm actually working with a global engineering consultant to do that analysis on a regional basis. And the good news is we're actually looking to pilot that solution in New Zealand with New Zealand local government. So that will be something we're looking to undertake end of this year, beginning of next. That capability will be looking at the holistic impact of risk and resilience, but also the insurability impact. So that ties into the sort of the planning, future planning state. And a key question that we constantly get asked is, climate change is dynamic. There is a risk of insurance retreat, which is real. So how do we understand that, and where do we, where is that tipping point? So that piece of work, watch the space when it comes out. We are hoping that the reason we're doing it in New Zealand, we've got a great relationship with yourselves and other local government entities, and there's a short circuit. We're a smaller community. You can get to decision makers and the information you need easier here than pretty much any other country in the world. So once that's done, then it would be a matter of, yes, we could look at regional impacts, the impacts of loss of multiple systems at the same time, with multiple perils impacting in an area. So you have an earthquake and a tsunami, or an earthquake followed by a flood the week after. And all of that is in sort of a 100-year horizon. And it's interesting, we're doing it with the engineering consultancy because they can provide the physical mitigation piece. So actually, what could be done physically, and we're coming at it from the financial mitigation piece. What other options? If traditional insurance is no longer available, what alternatives are there? How else could you fund risk, finance risk? So it is something that we're very aware of, and it's one of my more exciting projects that I'm involved in at the moment. So yeah, watch the space. If we're successful, and obviously I'm hoping we are, we will be advertising what we've done and the benefits that it brings across the local government and the central government space as well.
What sort of timelines do you have in mind for
probably Q2, Q3 next year is when we'll actually have outputs, and obviously it will be dependent on the local authority involved being willing to share. But generally, local government in New Zealand is very collaborative and wanting to work together. But it's not. It's a hotspot in the North Island, is what I'll say.
Right. Thank you very much.
Move, retrieve the report. Thank you for coming in.
Moved by Nicole, seconded by Jeremy. In favour?
Right.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon with the staff. Appreciate it. All right. Agenda item 9.7. So our annual report review of the draft. Marcus. The page count certainly went up when we got to your item on our, but that is to be expected. It is the year in review, and it's the public facing element of it. So I'll let you provide a brief introduction and then we can dive in.
Thanks very much. Apologies for the additional reading. I guess, this is annual report for the year. Effectively, we've sorted a little bit the work to start a little bit sooner to kick off faster, given that the election's coming up. This is due to go to council for approval on the 8th of October. So effectively, it's the opportunity for last final draft review, any additional comments that councillors may have or committee may have to assist that. But yeah, effectively, it's a summary of our position for the year based on our performance criteria in the long-term plan, but also understanding our financial performance too. So effectively, we achieved 65% of the targets in the long-term plan. Previous years, there were 63% in 23-24 and 62% in 22-23. So we're about on par where we were previously. And in terms of the financial position, effectively we ended the year with a surplus of 3.9 million. And so effectively, it's outlined here in the report. So happy for any comments or questions from the committee.
Great. Marcus. We'll start with Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just on the financials, there's a third annual report I've seen since I've been here, and each time we do seem to have a surplus left over. I guess at what point are we going to catch up? We've got commitments in the LTP. We've got, there were always what we budget through the LTP was required rate rises because of the lack of surpluses in that. So I guess what I'm asking is, what assurances do we have that we are going to get through the rate take to deliver on what has been promised in the LTP? And I guess it links back to the conversation that we had with Lucy prior this morning. So I guess I'm just going to keep knocking on that drum a wee bit just to make sure we crack on and spend in the areas that we have committed to, because they were big decisions and promises we've made to the community.
Yeah, would you like to, I guess,
Yeah, I can have a crack at that.
yeah, framing this paper, yeah, you can have a go, but I wasn't thinking, as our, what is this paper, we're making sure we're presenting the facts to the community of what we've done during the year. And there will be, of course, a critique of performance. I guess if that critique happens here, is what I'm just sort of asking myself. But you can have a first.
Yeah, sure. So effectively, where we sort of ended financially was there was 1.7 million in unrealised investment returns. Additionally, there was 1.9 million for government grants that were added in as well. So they weren't necessarily expected. And additionally, there's jobs for nature funding and additional work there for slow the flow projects and additional income from marine fees. And our expenditure was below budget, which is possibly the point you're picking up, roughly just under 400,000. Yeah, it's always probably from a high level, but a tension around how ambitious to go in your long-term plan. Do you really try and push the boat out and try and do lots with you, knowing that you're not going to achieve everything, or do you try and pare it back and make it achievable and not sort of set yourself that stretch goal of being excellent? So trying to weigh up those positions. Yeah, it's a difficult piece to try and do everything, but you take the point that trying to be effective and efficient and not wasting money and doing what we say we're going to do. Ideally, that performance would be a little bit higher. I mean, we missed some of those targets by a narrow margin. But we need to continue working and striving for excellence in that space. But happy for Patrick or any other exec to add any additional commentary.
Perhaps I'll follow on.
If you want to follow on, as the
similar things. When I look at those numbers, and I think we need to sell that message quite clearly, that you take out the aberrations of unrealised gains, extra funding we've received from government. Actually, when you we predicted a deficit. If you took out the 1.6 million for staff that haven't been replaced, and basically some things haven't been done or haven't been replaced because the government have told us to take a pause. If you took that out of the equation, 400,000 underspent, it's less than 1% of our budget. That says to me that actually our budgeting is pretty good, and we went and always think we should have a tight budget because that puts pressure on efficiencies. So I think it's actually a very good result. Personally, Patrick might like to comment, but when we take this out of the club, if we don't explain it clearly, you always said 4 million, you're taking too much off us. No, we actually haven't. The market, the unrealised market, and the fact that we are restricted enough by central government to have been able to get that amount of extra money is actually also very much a positive.
Patrick, would you like to see you there?
Yes, just a couple of brief comments. So I think just reflecting on some of the comments already made, some of the surplus is due to better than planned performance of, for example, the managed fund, which is positive, and if we had planned for those sorts of returns in the long-term plan, we wouldn't. That would have been relatively non-conservative to attempt to do that. The comment I would make is that in the long-term plan, there was quite a bit of planned investment in flood resilient assets over the full 10 years, and an expectation that government would fund 60% of that flood resilient asset program. The reality has been a little bit different, and the speed at which we are undertaking flood resilient asset work is different, and that's translated into less debt servicing costs than was in the long-term plan. So I do think some of those comments are quite valid in terms of, as we move into the next long-term plan, we have to be careful to plan the activity that we're going to do, cost that activity, and work against that activity, and then our budget is going to reflect our work program and is going to be closely aligned to our actual spend. I think there was some expectation that we were going to be doing more than we are now doing. So the refresh of the long-term plan is an opportunity to put some realism in against that.
Jeremy?
Just on, like, the reality is we've always got to be careful that we take money and we haven't used it, and or the finances, our investment committee investments were up X amount of dollars better. That is money for the community, that is money for us. So we are probably in a better place. We haven't spent it on capital works, we haven't borrowed as much. These are things that we've been rating on that we were expecting to be paying more interest, dealing with more capital borrowing. So there is that expectations where you haven't got it. What does that mean for next year's rates? I'm always very much saying, hey, rate it, spend it. Like as in, you need to make sure you're doing the work that we're rating for. And there's always been rollovers. We to be honest, there's a number of years that we never actually spend the money we rate for, and it's always a hard sell to the community when you go, oh, we're going to rate it. You haven't actually spent money. Took out of us last year, or our finances are better. And so I'm not really haven't got a question. I'm just saying this is how do we explain that? And sometimes you've got to be upfront and say, well, yeah, it's a better year. We have got 30 million invested. It's been a good return. But how do we bring that into the equation looking ahead? And I do have a question around the grants. I was just saying, is that money that we have spent in this year? We've got the extra income, or I'm just saying it's extra income there. I'm just saying, is it sitting there or has it been spent? I think it's been spent. I'm just saying, you've said that, oh, we had more government grants, so what have we done with it?
Yeah,
it's been spent.
I'll see does Jody want to answer? If you happen to be in
it sounds like, the government's forked out more than we thought it was going to, so we've, again, costs may have been a cost to the community, but actually the government's funded it. What do we do with the rest that we didn't? That's just to explain.
We've got some of those grants with specific projects, and so all of those are sort of into an allocated bucket that it cannot be allocated to anything else. So any grant that was slightly underspent will be carried forward specifically for their purpose into the next year. But all of them are fully allocated, and off the top of my head, there's only one grant that would be carried forward, which is due to be spent in this current financial year for Fresh Water Farm plans. So
it is money that has been spent in the system, and it would have been done extra work if we've got extra money. So that's what I'm coming to. Good.
Any other questions? I know when I look through this, I always look at the near the back of the annual report. They always talk about the graphs with the balanced budget and sort of within debt limits and affordability limits. Sort of has some of the key metrics, and all of those were within their required thresholds, and were green, which is good to see. That's what I look at specifically. And certainly financial performance, Finance Committee right throughout the year is monitoring the financial performance of the organisation, so nothing should be too big a surprise come year end. And the performance measures as well is always one that people keep an eye on. and yeah, it seems like it's on par with prior years, some up, some down as well. And Nicole, you had a
I think the other point is, like, we did deficit budget, and it's come, that's a real positive that we're not 1.2 million further in debt, and we actually haven't had to go into debt very much for the work we've done on the flood resilience stuff at this stage. So two positives. It's with more or less, the unspent budget is very small, but the other side of it is we haven't accrued the debt we thought we would. So that is positive. Yeah.
So I do not think we have any other questions from the floor. Ask someone to move. Jeremy, thank you. Seconded by John. In favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Item 9.8. PDF page 212. Scroll through. Amy, if you'd like to provide.
Yes, just as it is the last training with council, I'd like to take a slightly different slant on this report. It covers the changes to the program as normally does, but given that this was we separated this committee out from the it was a combined finance and risk committee previous trienniums. We developed a work program. We employed a risk officer. I would like to engage with you all and get your feedback on how you think the work program has gone through the triennium. Any changes, to the extent that you may be here next triennium or would like captured for the next triennium of council. So just take this opportunity to get your feedback.
John, you go first.
Yeah, look, I think as the committee's got on, we're maturing, we're getting better systems, and I just think every meeting we seem to be finding that balance of detail and governance and so, and obviously a lot of it to do with the chair, so thank you, Andrew. But yeah, I do feel we're getting into a good space, and we just keep building on that would be great.
Is there anything that's not on the work program that you might like to see on the work program?
I would personally, I'd like to see just reporting on vacancies, roles that are, what roles have become redundant, what roles are being filled, consents being processed, and just see a bit more of a pattern of what's going in and out of the building pretty much, and compliance failures, just so we get an overall, and it'll be bi-monthly, I would have thought, just so we've got a pretty quick snapshot as to where things are moving for us.
And so picking up on John's point with that, so I've seen the health and safety paper elsewhere move from health and safety to health, safety and well-being, of course as people, but then health, safety, well-being and people to talk about all the recruitment. So it's vacancies, job fills, sick leave, annual leave, and then sort of just people related matters as well, because they just all flow from one to the next. Yeah. Jeremy?
May not necessarily be here, but it's around, obviously we are getting a lot more reports, and health and safety has been a great one. We didn't have one, and going into where we are now, and we've learned a lot, and it's great the way we've got it. But as we get more and more reports from a governance point of view, it's more and more reading and time consumed. And I don't know, at some stage, I know it's important, we know having that security and knowing, hey, internally we know that's right, but it's also the workload for the governors to go, okay, do we need to be told every week something? There are some things that we do need to know, but it's more saying, hey, we understand that's going really well, and unless
something drastically changes, yeah, we need to report it back. But I'm just trying to work out, looking ahead in structures, committees and all these things. It's going to be okay, how do we deal? There is more workload on the governors, and there could be even more outside politically. I'm just saying with amalgamation, there's more and more, and just trying to work out, just trying to tease it out as we go ahead. And I suppose it's what comes to this table and what doesn't. Does that make sense? Without being
I've got some. So it's just so my thoughts on that very topic are around, because we've got so many standing items, you know, whether it's, you know, the internal audit or insurance and the likes. I think for each have sort of a templated format, or for us to see the same plan on a page each time for each paper, so that we can see and sort of have our role to monitor it. So we're in a monitoring role, and like you say, Jeremy, we don't have to be in the absolute weeds, but we want to make sure that there's progress. And I think that if the format of the paper changes every time, we have to try and think back to three months ago and 6 months ago of what was the conversation, which is not our role to do. So I think that the papers should have sort of an overarching plan. You know, there should be an insurance plan, the internal audit plan, the health and safety plan, and we monitor the progress of that. And that plan on the page stays the same each meeting. And then they can provide some detail, and we can read the 60 pages or not, you know, depending on, you know, what we're thinking about that overall progress on the plan.
Yeah, I think Amy did quite a good when we did the process around looking at recruitments and how you did the one pager, but then all the backup information if we chose to go. I think that was quite a good example.
I was just reflecting, you know, I'm conscious that, you know, you have a role as decision makers, and Morris has got his hand up. Morris, we've noted you just, so actually our question is, you know, noting and, you know, acknowledge workloads and lots of reading, acknowledge the need for consistency, you know, have we got the right level of decision making? You know, what are the things that you expected to be making decisions on versus providing a monitoring and oversight role? And is there a different way we could do that by way of briefing, picking up what you said earlier about, you know, exception reporting as well? So, well, I mean, we can workshop this and we can think about this. We can talk about that and whatever. But if you've got any thoughts about that specifically relevant relative to this committee, that would be good to understand. Yeah, Morris.
We'll go. Morris, if you want to talk first.
Oh, yes, thank you. I'm just wondering about, I see under quarterly reporting about governance level risk management overview. I can't recall exactly what that relates to, but I'm just thinking about code of conduct compliance. So we've had, recently we've had a review of our code of conduct, and it is something, it seems to me, that needs to be reviewed and reported on. I know it might be a bit difficult, but reported on a quarterly basis about the councillors' achievement or compliance with the code of conduct, because it's very important for the efficient running of the council. If we have a lot of problems in that area, it holds everything up, causes a lot of stress, and we need to make sure that you know, the code of conduct is being complied with by all of the members, and I think it would be useful to have some kind of quarterly review of how that is going, and we can have external people come in to talk to us about that, and we have had that in the past, but not very often, and I think it's something that we need to be constantly reminded of so that we get the best performance of the council in everything that we do.
Yep, you go first. Because so certainly, Morris, I think you're bang on, and one of the key tool that we have as a committee and probably haven't utilised, but is we're in charge of the organisational risk register, and we can put things on it or bump things up it, and then we can ask management to you know, do something about it and present to us on it. And so, you know, so we have, you know, a councillor can raise and say, actually, code of conduct is something that And if we all agree, then we can ask for management to present or take action on it. So that's sort of a tool that we've got, which we probably do need to use. We'll pass on to next training to be used more.
Through you, Chair, I think there's a couple of parts to Morris's question. One is the reporting of compliance or, analysis of risk, as you say, through that. But there's also the intention around how do we work with council, the wider group to, as you said, Morris, we've got externals that have come in, put that into a regular program of work of development support and review of progress and how council is functioning. So we can think about we've already started to think about that, how do you make it not just a one and done at induction time, but keep that learning and opportunity for review to go all the way through the training with council as well. So very much what will shape up with the governance team for you all going forwards.
Okay, so is that covered by that item there, governance level risk management?
No, that's specifically the public excluded bit where the chief executive comes and talks to this committee about what keeps them awake at night.
Right.
And foreshadows risk and shares that risk conversation with you.
Your point, Morris, I think would come up in 9.1 in our agenda, organisational risk report. That's our overarching risk management framework for the organisation, where you can dive into an area like future.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I had a few notes I've scribbled down as I've been listening to the conversation, and I apologise if they don't come out in the best order, but it seems to me that there's this overarching challenge is to zoom out and try and maintain an integrated perspective of the holistic sort of picture. And of course, the detail that's often provided in the lengthy reports sometimes drag us down away from that overarching zoomed out perspective. But having said that, I appreciate that sometimes it's important to capture detail, because these reports serve also as artifacts and evidence that need to be on record. And so my call would be, if in doubt, for staff to put it in rather than leave it out if they are worried about that. So that would be the first observation. I do believe that we are maturing, and I'd hate to change too much and give it away at this, what I think is an early stage. As a first-term councillor, I'm still getting my head around the range of risks that an organisation like this carries. I do wonder if there's an opportunity for us, and I use the broad term self-awareness as an organisation, and it speaks to the public engagement, public sentiment, and probably the public relations question that was flagged earlier around, are we able to better track or keep a pulse on how we are engaging with constituents we serve. So that self-awareness and perhaps culture piece connected with that. And the reason why I wonder if that may be important in the future, given that we need to consider future risks, is as we are confronted with RMA reform, regional spatial planning, potential amalgamation, we need to start thinking, how does our culture position us as we orient to these changes and challenges that are looming in the future for us? I suspect that that's an opportunity. An additional observation is that I suspect there's different risk appetites and risk perspectives between staff and council members, and I wonder if another additional perspective might be offered by mana whenua representatives, and I noticed that in this instance that's absent from this particular one, and that might bring an even more balanced dimension to our risk understanding. And so maybe one tool that would be really helpful for anyone stepping into the space would be some sort of maybe an A3 systems map, which helps maintain that picture of your zoomed out perspective as a ready reference tool to look at, so we can see how these things connect with each other between reserves, insurance, flood risk, climate change. That could be kind of helpful, but that's a piece of work. I'm not quite sure how that. Final observation is I believe AI is going to both support enhanced risk and assurance management, But there's also dimensions to that which we need to be aware of how that might be integrated into what we do. Might be with whom we brainstorm workshop at some point for some clever people around how that might be captured and utilised.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phil.
Chair.
My main one was the one from earlier, just in terms of just having an overarching monitoring role with each paper. Just it's probably the biggest one on my mind, just so that information just flows from one meeting to the next. We can sort of see that progress. That's the main. But the terms, so certainly our terms of reference, when I look through that, that is covering everything that I would expect it to cover. And so from my experience doing this role elsewhere, and that terms of reference is what best practice or industry expected in terms of what we are covering off in it. Anyway, so what we're doing around this table is definitely what is expected of us and what you would see others do elsewhere too.
Can I offer one more final comment? That is the point that was raised about item 11.6, which is usually PE, public excluded. There's a list of things in the report, in the agenda. I would observe that in the past, the previous CE didn't always speak to all of those points, but it was more like a shopping list which you would cherry pick from on a particular day and speak to. And I'm just wondering if maybe a little bit more consistency would be valued and useful in terms of tracking issues.
Yep.
On that particular agenda item. Yep.
Happy to move the item.
Thank you, Neil. Seconded by John. In favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Got a nice bullet list there, Amy?
Yes.
Good.
Open to the to-do list.
Great. All right, we are now going to move. There's no extraordinary or urgent business. 10. So we're now going to move into public excluded. So we've got something to read out.
In accordance with section 48(1) of the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act of 1987, and in particularly interests protected by section 7 of that act, that the public be excluded from the following parts of proceedings of this meeting, namely the confirmation of the public excluded minutes from the 12th of June, the adoption of the public excluded committee resolutions, a cybersecurity report and internal audit, a legislative compliance report, government funded projects report, and audit management report.
Having heard the reasons, I'm happy to move the public excluded.
Thank you. And seconded by Jeremy. I saw the finger go up very quickly. In favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you.
Might we just confirm that we are stopping live streaming.
Live stream is now finished.
Thank you, Rebecca.